Welcome back to the deep dive. So we are fully into 2026, and this time of year always feels like a big psychological milestone.
A reset button.
Exactly. It's when we all kind of stop, take inventory, and ask that really critical question, who do I want to become? And this desire for transformation is universal, but for millions, that journey has to start with an even deeper one, addiction recovery.
Right.
And that's what this deep dive is about. It's not about just stopping a substance. It's about starting the life that addiction put on hold.
And that idea of a stalled life, that's so central to the sources we've been looking at, especially the models from New Life Recovery Centers in San Jose.
Okay.
Addiction isn't just about damaging your health or your relationships. It basically acts as a permanent brake on your emotional and psychological growth. So our mission today is to unpack how that brake works.
And then show the path forward.
And then, crucially, map out the structured path, the curriculum, really, that good treatment programs provide to restart that essential growth.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're looking for those insights that define recovery not as, avoiding something, but as actively building a stronger, more authentic self. We need to get past the surface stuff.
Exactly. And let's start with the core mechanism that stops that growth. Our sources call it the numbness barrier.
The numbness barrier.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Emotional maturity, it requires resilience. And resilience is built by facing discomfort, by learning from failure, by just tolerating pain long enough to have an insight.
So if I'm feeling stressed or sad, I have a choice. I can either sit with it and figure out what's really going on or find a fast way to make the feeling just go away.
Precisely. And alcohol or a substance becomes that instant, super effective substitute for growth. Why would you develop a complex skill for emotional regulation when you have an off switch for every bad feeling?
It's the ultimate shortcut.
The ultimate shortcut that prevents you from ever having to evolve.
Yeah.
It lets a 40-year-old deal with disappointment with, the maturity of a teenager because their growth was just frozen solid years ago.
Yeah, I see. So the developmental clock literally just stops. What specific areas of growth get hit the hardest by this? Because it sounds like it's way more than just managing your mood.
Oh, it's pervasive.
Yeah.
It attacks the very foundation of how you live an intentional life. We see huge disruptions in emotional regulation, just the ability to handle strong feelings.
Right.
We see the erosion of accountability, and that just destroys self-trust. If you constantly break promises to yourself, even little ones, you stop believing you can change.
And I imagine communication breaks down too, because real, honest communication means being vulnerable, which requires that tolerance for discomfort you just mentioned.
Absolutely, which then spills into relationships. You can't have meaningful, deep relationships because trust just becomes a casualty. But maybe the biggest loss is the ability to set long-term goals.
Because you can't see past the next fix.
Exactly. Life shrinks down to just survival. You're just reacting to triggers instead of intentionally building a future.
That shift from reactive survival to intentional living, that seems to be where recovery really begins its work. But if treatment removes that numbness, how does the motivation change? A lot of people go into treatment because they're scared or ashamed, not because they're seeking self-mastery.
And that's the key difference between just stopping for a bit and real lasting change. The sources are really clear that lasting recovery thrives when the motivation shifts past shame and into a desire for personal growth, for freedom. You stop focusing on what you're losing, the drug, and you start focusing on who you are gaining, a stronger, wiser, more self-aware version of you.
This moves us perfectly into one of the most powerful psychological ideas about change, which is post-traumatic growth, or PTG. For anyone listening who hasn't heard of this, what are we talking about?
Post-traumatic growth is the positive psychological change that can happen after you struggle with something incredibly challenging or traumatic. And when we talk about addiction, we are almost always talking about trauma. Whether it's a big acute trauma or that long, slow burn of stress or just the deep self-inflicted pain of the disease itself.
Okay, I have to stop you there because that can sound a little bit like a self-help cliche, Does PTG mean that trauma is somehow good for you because it makes you grow?
That is the single most important nuance, and it's critical to get it right. PTG absolutely does not minimize the trauma. It doesn't say the pain was necessary, the pain is real, the loss is real. But growth can coexist with that pain. The best analogy I've heard is a broken bone. The break itself is excruciating, it's damaging, but when it heals, the bone is often denser and stronger right at that fracture site.
That's a fantastic analogy.
That difficult experience forces a new level of self-care and, well, structural support.
So through therapy and real work, a person can reframe the crisis of addiction. It's not a character flaw, but this huge life event that forced a total system reboot.
Precisely. You're forced to look at your deepest beliefs, your values. And when you come out the other side, the sources point to these really specific, powerful outcomes. It's not just being happy, it's a tangible restructuring.
Like having a much deeper appreciation for life, for the simple things that were completely lost in the chaos of addiction.
Yes. And they build this profound resilience. Not the kind that says, I can handle anything, but the kind that says, I know my limits, I know how to ask for help, and I trust I can get through this because I've already been through the worst.
So they build stronger boundaries.
Stronger personal boundaries, because they've learned the hard way what happens when those fall apart.
And what about how they relate to other people?
Often there's a huge increase in empathy and compassion for others, and so importantly for themselves. After walking through that internal war, they get a clearer sense of what really matters, their values, and a confidence that they can face future stress, because now they have internal tools, not just a quick external fix.
But this growth isn't an accident. It has to be structured. It's the result of deliberate work across different parts of your life. Our sources lay out 4 key pillars of growth for this kind of transformation. Let's dive into those.
They're interconnected, but they do follow a kind of sequence. The first, the most foundational, is emotional growth.
Okay, we touched on this, but how is this different from just, feeling your emotions?
It's the difference between reacting and responding. Emotional growth is about literacy. It's learning to recognize, to name, and then to tolerate complex emotions instead of just running from them or numbing them.
So if you feel panic, you can actually say, okay, this is anxiety, I feel it in my chest, and then choose a coping skill instead of just lashing out.
Exactly. It's building the muscle to sit in that discomfort long enough to identify the feeling, which leads to smarter decisions. That emotional literacy makes real relationships possible.
Because you can actually say what's going on inside.
You can articulate it. And once that starts to develop, you're ready for pillar 2, psychological growth.
Now wait, if you're already doing all that emotional work, identifying feelings, how is psychological growth different?
Emotional growth is the skill. It's the what. What am I feeling? Psychological growth is the insight. It answers the why. Why do I feel this way? Where did this coping strategy come from? This is where you uncover the unmet needs for safety, for connection that substances were trying to fill.
This is where you dismantle the shame.
Fundamentally, psychological insight replaces shame with clarity. When you realize addiction wasn't a moral failing, but a really dysfunctional coping response to real pain, the whole story changes. You go from, I'm a bad person, to I'm a person who made bad choices because I had an unmet need.
That is a massive shift for anyone trying to get their self-worth back. Okay, so once you have that clarity, the third pillar must be about applying it. That brings us to behavioral growth.
Right. Behavioral growth is turning that insight into action, from understanding to doing. This is where you hone the practical day-to-day skills.
So we're talking about building new routines, setting firm boundaries, learning what your triggers are, and having a plan.
Exactly. And every single time you apply a new behavior, you go for a walk when you're stressed, instead of isolating, you build self-efficacy. You build proof.
You're rebuilding trust in yourself.
Every single time. You regain that trust by consistently doing what you said you would do. It's practical self-mastery.
Which leads us to the fourth and final pillar, which is spiritual or values-based growth. This sounds like it puts everything else into a larger context.
It does. This connects you back to meaning, to purpose. And it doesn't have to be religious. It's about figuring out your core values. Integrity, family, service, whatever they are, and then making sure your daily actions line up with them.
So if behavioral growth teaches you how to manage your Tuesday,
spiritual growth reminds you why Tuesday matters.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And when your actions line up with your purpose, life feels intentional, not just reactive. That's the goal.
It is. That's the difference between just not using and truly living a full life.
But to achieve all of this emotional, psychological, behavioral, and spiritual growth, you need more than just willpower. You need the right environment and expert guidance. And this brings us right to structured support, specifically the Continuum of Care and New Life Recovery Centers. They're located in San Jose, serving Silicon Valley and the whole Bay Area.
And they've been doing this for over 21 years. Their entire structure is designed to walk people through these 4 pillars of growth. You can't just jump from chaos to purpose. You need a map. Their Continuum of Care is that map.
Okay, let's walk through the steps they offer, starting with the most immediate need, just getting stable.
That starts with alcohol and drug detox. This is the physical foundation. You can't do any deep psychological work if your body is in crisis. Detox is that first critical step where physical stability lets clarity and presence safely return.
And once you're stable, you can move into an environment that's all about that deep introspection. That would be inpatient residential treatment.
Right. Residential is the incubator. It's where the heavy lifting on emotional and psychological growth happens. It's a secure, immersive space, completely free from the distractions of daily life. This is where you can finally dig in and uncover why the substance was needed in the first place.
The shame to clarity transformation,
That's where it begins.
then you have to start re-entering the real world, but with a safety net. That's where the PHP day treatment, the partial hospitalization program, comes in.
PHP is the bridge. It lets you start practicing all those new behavioral growth skills, managing stress, holding boundaries in the real world, but with the full support of a day-long therapeutic program. You apply what you learned, and when you hit a snag, the clinicians are right there to help you process it.
And finally, to support that long-term values-based life, they have the Superflex IOP, or Intensive Outpatient Program.
The Superflex model is so important because it recognizes that growth has to fit into a real, busy life, especially in Silicon Valley. This flexibility lets you continue your recovery work while you're also integrating back into your career or parenting or school.
It sounds incredibly thorough. They also integrate dual diagnosis care, which is so critical, addressing the anxiety, depression, or trauma that was probably fueling the addiction all along.
And they use every tool available to help. That includes medication-assisted treatment, or MAT, which can help stabilize the brain, reduce cravings, and just lower that emotional volatility so you can actually do the therapeutic work. Plus, their alumni program keeps people connected and supported for the long haul.
So if you or someone you love is ready to stop letting addiction stall their life, New Life Recovery Centers provides this incredibly compassionate and sophisticated care right there in San Jose. And they work to remove the financial barriers, too. They're in network with most major insurance companies, PPOs, EAPs, and union programs.
This whole journey of growth, you don't have to do it alone. If you're ready to explore treatment that is truly focused on personal growth and deep transformation, you just need to reach out. Call 408-297-1182 today for a free confidential consultation today.
So, to summarize our whole deep dive, success in recovery isn't just a calendar on the wall. It's measured by the quality of your inner life, by emotional literacy, by psychological clarity, by better relationships, and by a real, durable sense of purpose.
Yeah, we live in this world that's obsessed with outcomes,
Yeah.
with the end result. But recovery teaches us the most essential lesson. You have to focus on the process. If you commit to the process of growth, emotional, psychological, behavioral, spiritual, then self-mastery is, it's pretty much inevitable.
Recovery isn't about surviving the end of addiction. It is, like our sources so beautifully put it, the beginning of becoming who you were meant to be.
And that transformation is available right there in San Jose. If you are ready to begin that lifelong journey of becoming, the support and the structure are waiting.
For a confidential consultation, call 408-297-1182.